Hi, welcome back, everyone. We're going to be introducing Dr. Elizabeth Osborne in just 1 second, but I wanted to take a minute and give my team at Second Avenue a shout out. They worked until the wee hours of the morning, accommodating requests and changes from presenters, and are making sure that all the trains keep running in the background and that Zoom is doing what it should be. So, Megan, Jen, Linda, Sven, you guys all rock. Ian in the background, who made sure that the elections went off without a hitch. Thank you. All right, so now on to Dr. Elizabeth Osborne. She is the Director of Education at the Indiana Center on Representative Government. Prior to her work there, she was the creator of the Indiana Supreme Court's award-winning education outreach program, Courts in the Classroom. Having taught at multiple Indiana University campuses as well as high school social studies, Dr. Osborne brings years of classroom experience to her work in educational outreach. Welcome, Dr. Osborne, and over to you.
Thanks, Tori. I just got the message from the host that she wanted me to stop my video. But if you were here before the video started, you saw that I had my nice headshot that had my pre-COVID haircut on it. So this is what it looks like if you have short hair and you haven't had a haircut in about 9 weeks or so. So welcome today. I'm going to share my screen real quick. And as you know, sometimes this is a work in progress. So here we go. I'm going to begin to share. Want to just give a little introduction. I am a former classroom teacher. I've taught high school social studies in Hawaii. And as I saw that Emma mentioned in the chat, I am a proud James Madison Fellow, as are a couple of our presenters. One of the things that's going to be a little bit different about our presentation is we actually have 3 classroom teachers who are going to join us in showing how they use engaging Congress in their classrooms. So you're going to see a bunch of kind of change ups in 3 different styles, and you're going to hear some different voices as well as learning some about engaging Congress. So please feel free to share questions in the chat. We have a small but mighty team of teachers and some of my colleagues who are going to try to help monitor the chat and answer your questions as we go. So I'm going to start here with my first slide. I just want to give you a tiny bit of background about engaging Congress. As lots of people have been mentioning, the Library of Congress was foresighted enough about 5 years ago to fund a series of digital civics interactives. And Engaging Congress was one of those original digital civics interactives, along with Kid Citizen, who presented earlier and is a great resource for K through 5. I want to emphasize over and over again that these are always free. They were funded with your tax dollars and then additional support and funding from our own institutions. In my case, it's the Indiana University Center on Representative Government, where we work to create more informed and active participants for all levels, K through 12, higher ed, and adults. My focus as education director, though, is on the K through 12 classrooms, and that is where Engaging Congress comes in. So I want to emphasize that it's always free and that it is privacy compliant. We don't collect any information or have a classroom sign in or log in for you. And a little bit later near the end, we'll talk about some different ways that you can do some assessment. But as Emma from iCivics was emphasizing earlier, we really want to show you that this is a game that you can integrate. We always are pushing during non-COVID times how you can integrate digital interactives into your classroom. So today we just get to focus on how you're using it for your remote learning. And one of the characteristics of Engaging Congress is that all of the components can be used individually. As you can see from our screenshot here, we have 5 different thematic units that cover issues like federalism and state rights, separation of power, voting rights, federal spending, and how different citizens are treated equally by our system. And we work within each of the modules to take examples of primary sources all the way from the founding era to the present. We want the students to not only learn the historic background, but also how it applies to their lives today. And we are focused on all primary source bases. So the students are actually going to be using and interacting with primary sources from the Library of Congress that on our webpage, you can actually link back to the Library of Congress. So we are focusing on the inquiry cycle. We want you to analyze primary sources online using the inquiry cycle, and there are 30 primary sources. And there are 5 videos, 1 for each of the units, and then there are 5 games, 1 for each of the units, and then there are knowledge checks, which will help you with the assessment. So I have one more slide before I show you a brief video here. So again, we're using those Library of Congress primary sources. We want to give you opportunities to do assessment or just opportunities to build critical thinking skills. I'm always telling people that they can use this for science or math or art if they want to just use one primary source a day and build their students' primary thinking skills. And we give you lots of chances for differentiated learning, for building it up and for building it down. We have teachers as low down isn't the exact right word, but from 4th grade up through high school, from teachers who are using it for ELL to teachers who will use this as a base for AP and jump off. So having said that, I'm now going to jump to a brief how-to video. It's a little bit around 2 minutes that I'm going to play for you that'll introduce you to many aspects of the game. And I'm going to pause it at times to kind of explain some features.
Engaging Congress. It's a game that uses primary source documents, photographs, maps, political cartoons, and other items to explore the challenges faced by representative democracy in the U.S. today. Engaging Congress includes 5 thematic stories. More equal than others, influencing the political process. Laws and sausages, the separation of powers. Vote early, vote often, voting rights. A balancing act, the federal budget. And fair is not always equal, federalism and states' rights. Playing is easy. First, choose a story from the story menu. Each story begins with a short video that provides important background information about the story. Next, you'll see the primary sources menu. Once you select a source, just follow the prompts on the screen. Match keywords or image details to each resource by dragging the thumbnails onto the resource. Engaging Congress. It's a game that uses primary source documents, photographs, maps, more equal than others, influencing the political process. Laws and sausages, the separation of powers. Vote early, vote often, voting rights. A balancing act, the federal budget. And fair is not always equal, federalism and states' rights. Playing is easy. First, choose a story from the story menu. Each story begins with a short video that provides important background information about the story. Next, you'll see the primary sources menu. Once you select a source, just follow the prompts on the screen. Match keywords or image details to each resource by dragging the thumbnails onto the resource. Correct place.
Okay, it worked that time. I was trying to stop it because I just wanted to point out a feature to you here. Once when the students drag and drop, they are able to pinch and pull on the screen. So if they're using any kind of a touch-enabled screen, whether it's a Chromebook or a laptop that has touch-enabled or their iPad or any kind of phone, they're going to be able to zoom in and zoom out on the different sections of the primary source. That's one of the highlights of this interactive is the students get to interact with the primary source. So again, this leads me to the point that I should have made earlier, that it plays across all platforms. So you can play it on Chromebooks, you can play it from your desktop, you can lead a Zoom, you can lead an in-class demonstration, you can have your students download it. And as was pointed out earlier, once the students have downloaded it onto a mobile device, not only do they not need internet, but they don't need to use data either. I know here in Indiana, we have a lot of equity issues. So all around campuses and around town, we have all sorts of mobile hotspots where students are like driving to universities or libraries and sitting outside and are able to access the internet. So that's helping with the equity issue a little bit. But the other thing that I want to point out as I have it paused here is that these first 3 analysis questions that the students will answer based on the dragging and dropping require no background knowledge. So you can really use them for kind of a lead into a session, or you can use them in the middle, or you can use them as a post-test, or you can use them in a totally different subject area. Because the students should be able to use their critical thinking skills, which we're working on developing, to answer the questions based on what they're seeing. And once they've chosen one of the answers, they're going to get feedback, either if it's right or if it's wrong. And the feedback will try to help anticipate what conclusion they made, whether it was wrong or right, to again focus on building those critical thinking skills. And you can see down in the bottom here is that they have stars. And if they get it right on the first time, they get a full star. If they get it right the second time, they get a half a star. And then if they don't get it right, they can't guess that third time. They can go back and play it again and get their completion stars, but they can't get them right. They can't just guess to get through. And again, you could just use the primary source analysis if you wanted. This is one of the ways where we encourage assessment. You can have your kids send screenshots at the end of a module, if they do the whole module, to show you if they've gotten their stars. And if it's taken them 10 tries to get all the 3 stars, then we hope they're feeling like they might have learned that as they repeated it over and over again. And another thing is that you could assign them in advance just to go in and watch that video the day before. Or if you have one of those choice cards, kind of a bingo card, and you want to fill it with different activities, you can have one day you can have the video as a choice, you can have a primary source analysis from the unit as a choice, you can have the game as a choice. And then, as we're going to see here in a second, you have knowledge check questions as well that you can use if this is.
Of the thumbnails launches a series of multiple choice questions. After you answer the questions, Dig Deeper will provide further background and context for each resource. The app features a primary source gallery with links to the Library of Congress and other online digital collections. You can assess what you've learned with the redistricting challenge and other minigames, the knowledge check questions, and finally, rack up your score playing the trivia challenge. The Engaging Congress website has many supporting resources, including the Teacher Toolbox, featuring learning objectives, activities correlated to government and U.S. history standards, and a bank of multiple choice and essay questions. Engaging Congress helps students understand the importance of getting involved with democracy and becoming an engaged citizen. Play the game, learn the facts, make a difference.
Okay, so I'm going to jump out of this and I'm going to move my screen actually to the Engaging Congress website here for the last couple seconds before my first co-presenter comes on. And we're hoping she's able to unmute her microphone whenever it's time for Kayla to present, who is the next one. So here is our teacher toolbox, which gives you the learning objectives. And if you slide down right in here, here is that how to play video. And if you're going to play through the web, you click right here on the play through the web button. Pretty soon, you're going to be able to play right across the top. It's going to have a play button and you'll be able to jump right to the play place, but that's still in developing. And it just reminds you about playing in the App Store. I also want to point out that all the videos are available on our YouTube channel. So you can go to the YouTube channel and you can pull any one of these videos on the 5 content areas or the video. Yes.
We're only seeing your PowerPoint. We're not actually seeing the site right now. I think because you're only sharing your application and not your full screen.
Thanks, Emma.
You bet.
Create it. There we go. Should you see it now? New share?
Yes, very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. So again, here I'm going to show you the library or the website, and here's where the play button is going to be. But for right now, if you're playing with your Chromebooks or your laptops, you're going to click on this button. And I'm going to go down and show you here are other videos if you just wanted to play those. Also on our YouTube sites, which you can embed any of this in your Google Classroom if you're using a Google Classroom. You can also, I think, using Quizlet, you can access the YouTube channels. I skipped over this before, but we also have buttons for teachers of different topics because we are organized thematically, but if you are a U.S. history teacher, you are going to want to see them organized by topic. So you know within each of the 5 thematic units, which are the ones for Reconstruction, Civil War, Progressive Era, etc. The teacher toolbox provides you some alignments that you can look at. And here, if you click here, is where you're going to be able to go back to find access to the links of all the Library of Congress primary sources, which is cool. So when we get back to the classroom, if you wanted to do gallery walks or sorted activities, or even just print out one, that's a place to access. And here at the bottom, I want to show you that we have classroom giveaways that you can request squeeze heads and stickers and tattoos and things like that that you can share with your students. I know that doesn't work for remote learning, but it's good for distance learning. Okay, so I think at this point, that's going to take me to our next panelist, who is Kayla Moro. We have a great group of panelists of teachers who are going to present different ideas about how they use Engaging Congress in the classroom. And we got a great variety for you. We have a social studies curriculum specialist for a school district. We have a high school teacher, and we have a middle school teacher. And we've got great geographic diversity for you, so you can ask questions from our Texas, Pennsylvania, and Florida teachers. So first up is Kayla Moro, and she, after a 12-year stint in the social studies classroom, teaching everything from world geography to AP government, Kayla is now serving her third year as a social studies specialist for the Tyler Independent School District. She's also an adjunct professor for Tyler Junior College, and she was the Teacher of the Year in 2017. So now I am going to attempt to go back and stop sharing the website and go back to sharing PowerPoint, and hopefully Kayla is going to be able to unmute her microphone and jump in. Are you there?
Yes,
Kayla, you should be all set.
I'm unmuted. So are you ready to share screen?
So I've got the screen shared for everybody. I'm going to run the PowerPoints.
Elizabeth, you need to share your screen again.
Okay. I'm going back to Zoom because I'm having trouble with that. So Kayla, start talking.
Yeah, you bet. Okay, so we're just going to take a quick glance at issues of the progressive error, and you guys will be able to see this when the slides get going here. One thing that I really like about Engaging Congress is that you do have an option to search by era. And so we're going to look specifically at what the site provides for the progressive error, just so you can get an idea of how you could build a lesson around a specific unit. So one way that we have been able to utilize Engaging Congress resources in Tyler ISD is, like, in addition to initial instruction and enrichment, we've also been able to use it as an intervention tool. So if a kid needs to look at a specific standard, or they need to look at a specific skill or specific era, you do have an option to do this using Engaging Congress. And so we've aligned Engaging Congress resources to our standards, to our state standards, and we vetted them to make sure that they meet the specificity of our TEKS. So we're going to look first at a visit to the big store. So here, if we started with a visit to the big store, you would see what you're seeing on the side is the Texas state standards. So this one would be perfectly aligned to civil service reform and also the pros and cons of big business. That's what we would use or could use to reinforce those standards. So what we would do with this assignment is use the question formulation technique, if you're familiar with that, through the Right Question Institute, and have the kids just start posing questions. Who's the big guy? Who does he represent? What's the gavel for? And they're just listing those types of questions. We find that the QFT really supports that inquiry cycle that Elizabeth spoke about. And it also fosters agency and identity and ownership. So we would have students, they could, in a digital format, they could create a Padlet and answer and, you know, put their answer choices there. We'd find that this would promote kind of like a safety net for your kids, and it would also increase engagement. We're going to take a look at another set of standards that are covered in the progressive error. So this is a lot. So we can see where one lesson in Engaging Congress or one activity in Engaging Congress can be used to teach several of our state standards. So 5A would be to analyze the impact of the passage of the 16th Amendment. And then you would also see the social studies skills. So Common Core historical thinking skills they match our social studies processing skills. So these are our declarative and our procedural statements, our I knows and I can shows. So these are the ones that we're going to cover with the next assignment. So if we explore the 16th Amendment resources that are engaging Congress, this little next part is just lesson, the assignment that we would give to our kids is remember that you're going to pose questions that are going to support the compelling questions. And engaging Congress lists the compelling questions or the challenge to democracy. So how do we equitably collect the revenues needed to run our government? And how do we fairly distribute the great wealth of our nation? So those would be the two questions that kids are going to be considering as we're moving into our engaging Congress activities. So then we would start with new man on the job. And this is probably one of my favorite of the political cartoons. So we'd start first, and we use OPTIC, which is a strategy for analyzing primary sources, specifically cartoons. So I went ahead and just listed it. You may be familiar with it. Overview, point of view, text, inference, and then conclusion. So we could do one of two things. We could start with OPTIC and kind of have the kids go through this before they get on to engaging Congress. Or this could be kind of like your checkpoint. Once you've gone to engaging Congress and did the activities in engaging Congress, I want you to come back and tell me if you can really tell me the importance of this political cartoon. Are you able to analyze it? So then next, we would go into engaging Congress. And I love this tool in engaging Congress. It really helps your kids to experience success. So if you do have some students that are struggling, being able, like this specific activity really helps them to be successful because it's kind of like it's a safety net. There's a no fail. You see the picture, it highlights, you move it over, you answer a question. Those questions to me are kind of like built-in modifications. There's fewer answer choices there. There are easier questions there. And I think it gives your students an opportunity to get the big picture. As you can see over to the side, the next part of the 16th Amendment that's listed is really text heavy. So if you have a struggling reader that gets some of the success in this first part, then they can move on to that reading, understanding the big idea. So I think that being able to complete this first part is a really important element of scaffolding for your students. So you would see then the instructions that we give the students is before you move on to the knowledge check, then you have to go to the 16th Amendment. If they don't go and read that 16th Amendment article, then they're not going to be able to do that knowledge check well. So we would tell them, we would encourage them to go to that next part before moving on. And then finally, we would have the students go into the knowledge check. The first part here shows the first question. The picture pops up, so it's gonna be recall for them, and then they're answering the question. If they don't do well, then you see this little pop-up box that will come up to reinforce those ideas, to give them kind of like their review. They can go back and read it. And what I really like about this part in the knowledge check is that review box is the same. It doesn't go back through and give you, a lot of information going through. It's a review of the same information to kind of give kids an opportunity to really show what they know when it comes to that. So that built-in review tool is great if kids miss a question. It's great for self-monitoring. In TISD, we really align our district expectations for instruction with the 5 dimensions of teaching for robust understanding. And so you can see how engaging Congress supports that with the content. The content is there. The cognitive demand is there with the inquiry and how you can improve the rigor. The equitable access to content is there. All kids can access Engaging Congress. Dr. Osborne talked about how it's accessible and it runs in different platforms. And so that's there for our students. The big part about questioning is that it does foster agency and ownership and identity. And then finally, you have the knowledge check that can be used as formative assessment. So when you're building lessons, and in my role as an instructional specialist, really pushing those 5 dimensions every single time, Engaging Congress does a great job of doing that. And we don't have to worry about a lesson meeting one of those 5 dimensions. So I know I've moved pretty fast and furious here, but I want you guys to get into some of the other presentations. So that's what I have, and thanks a lot.
Kayla, that was perfect. Thank you. And I'm going to leave your slide up here for a minute because one of the things that I didn't mention that you can see in her slide is that we have glossaries embedded. So when they click on the tariffs, you can see right there, they can click on that and they will have a glossary term, and we have those throughout the game. And another thing that I didn't mention is that all of the videos are closed captioned, which is good for everybody. It's good for the ELL learners. It's good for, hearing impaired students. It's good for a classroom where kids forgot their headphones. So you can use that in many ways. And we're also working with a teacher to do Spanish translation. So that's something that we are looking for to come up soon. So at this point, we did have a poll that we wanted to set out at the beginning just to ask what you were teaching, and we didn't get that done. So if you guys don't mind, in the chat boxes, we would love it if you would enter your name and what you are teaching in there, and we can just look at that and get an idea of where you're from and what you're teaching. But in the meantime, we do have a second poll. I don't know if Megan is on and if she can launch that poll for us. There it is. So I talked that we are a part of the Library of Congress consortium. So here are some of the other Library of Congress members, and Kid Citizen is already presented today, and Emma Humphrey's DB Quest from iCivics is also a part of the thing. So if you guys would just go ahead and vote on that, that would be great. And you can do that while I'm introducing our next panelist. Now, due to my inability to move between screens really quickly, I am going to try to just remember Jen's introduction. So Jen Jolley is our next presenter, and she's from Palm Bay Magnet High School in Florida. And she is one of my fellow Madison Fellows, and she is also a board certified teacher and a member of the iCivics Educator Network. She is a high school teacher. So she is going to do some high school information for us. I cannot see the poll, so I sure hope you guys are voting, because I can see the poll, but I can't see any statistics. And we'll have Megan at the end of Jen's presentation shoot up the results of this one, and then we have a final poll. So I'm going to go ahead and move to Jen's first slide, and I am going to mute myself, and I'm hoping that Jen is on and has her video playing and her audio. Jen, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thanks, Dr. Osborne, for that
Fantastic.
wonderful introduction. I just wanted to also state that, a couple of years ago when I first met you, this platform, Engaging Congress, just blew me away. So I am so proud and happy to be one of your teachers talking about this wonderful platform today. If you notice, and with the screen that we're looking at right now, it's called Vote Early, Vote Often. And so this is, what I did is I chose one of the stories to highlight. And you'll notice the stars, and that's if I got all of the questions right. And then if I had 2.5 stars, that means I must have missed one, and maybe I didn't go back and get it right or what have you. So just to kind of give you an idea of what I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to be highlighting the Voting Rights Act of 1965 today, and also women's suffragists. Next slide, please, Liz. Thank you. All right, so one of the things I really like about Engaging Congress is that it opens up with a wonderful essential question. So the Voting Rights Act of 1965 removed many obstacles to voting, but how do we prevent new obstacles from challenging voter rights? And of course, this can be something to look at in today's world. Next slide. All right, so when you do open up the module, you will see that it's the drag and drop, and you may have seen that from the earlier video, and it's drag and drop, but you're looking at the primary source, you're looking at the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and so then you're asked, the learners ask some very, very good questions that really they have to stop and think about. You'll also notice that jurisdiction is one of the terms, and if this learner were to click on that, they could see the definition. Next slide, Liz. All right, so many teachers ask me, okay, I see that it's a game, but I want a little bit more. What do I do with my APUSH students? What do I do with my AP Government students? I want to get a little bit more rigor. So one of the things that I noticed as I was looking at this is that the Voting Rights Act is basically having an anniversary coming up in August. It's 55th anniversary this year. And so what I did is, and I will put some of these links in the chat box later for you, but what I did is I put, I found rather, from the Teaching Primary Sources Teacher Network, a wonderful album of about 20 different next slide, Liz, please. A wonderful collection of images that could be used. So just like Kayla was talking about earlier, the using inquiry, and next slide, please, Liz. Using inquiry of, for instance, using the Library of Congress's primary source analysis tool. One of the things I really like about this tool is that, you know, you can download it as a doc, the students can fill it out, and also learners could, you know, could handwrite this if you were to print it out for them. That's what I usually do in my classroom. But this invites the students to really think about what they see by their observation and question and reflect. So if you haven't had a chance to look at this lately, do check it out on the Library of Congress's website. Now, something else that I wanted to share with you is that, you know, just this week, actually, I had a teacher who was helping out one of her daughter who was taking APUSH, and this question came up about the Voting Rights Act of 1965 being invalidated or found unconstitutional by the Supreme Court with this particular case. So what I did is I shared with her the understanding and to help, you know, her daughter with her homework here. But if you are not familiar perhaps with the oye.org site, I highly suggest that you check it out, especially for those of you that teach law studies or AP Government or even APUSH or any of your high school courses. What I like about it is it shows, you know, the decisions, it shows the pictures of the justices, and then it has the question, it has the conclusion. And so what this 2013 case did find is that Section 4B was found unconstitutional in just recent years. So it's interesting how, you know, a law that was written 55 years ago is still being analyzed today. And I think that's what we need to continue to teach our students. I also want to share with you this you know, I would be remiss without talking about women's suffrage. Women's suffrage is celebrating its 100th anniversary this year. And so what I had to do is, you know, Chronicling America from Library of Congress, you know, of course, you know, Engaging Congress started at Indiana University. And so, you know, I had to pull up, you know, August 18th, 1920 edition to highlight. And so just so you all understand, these newspapers, this project through Library of Congress is just incredible. And if you haven't had a chance to check it out, please do so. But this gives perspective, and it has, you know, so if we're looking at the 19th Amendment, this is perspective of what was going on. And of course, the same could be, you know, done with newspapers with the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Now, again, I know this is a lot, and I just wanted to share some wonderful resources. Most of them are from the Library of Congress, and I will put them into the chat box so that you can have access to them. And then also from the National Archives. And then just before us, iCivics has also rolled out wonderful suffrage infographics as well. So again, wonderful things out there for us all to use. And I just wanted to share that, we can just spearhead and bounce off of Engaging Congress. Thanks, Liz.
Thanks, Jen. That was great. There's so many anniversaries related to voting this year, and the voting module of Engaging Congress has many of these things in there for you. And here's some great things for what people have used. That's wonderful to see it. Thanks for sharing that, Megan. And we have another poll for you before we move to our final classroom teacher of the day. So if Megan can throw up our final poll for us. We are always looking to build Engaging Congress, so we would love for some ideas from you guys about what do you think are some of the next most important. And after I wrote this, I also thought, gosh, I should have added foreign policy, because I would really like to do foreign policy. So our next classroom presenter is Larry Dorenkamp, who is from North Hills Middle School, which is in suburban Pittsburgh, and he is an 8th grade teacher. So we're kind of bringing in another voice there for you. He is also a Madison Fellow. We're giving those shout outs to the Madison Fellow, and he has a master's degree already, but now he is completing one through Ashland University as a part of the Madison Fellowship Program. So if you guys could go ahead and vote, and hopefully we've got Larry, are you there with your audio?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Fantastic. I can hear you all.
Awesome. Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks for showing up today. When I came across Engaging Congress, it was about, I think, Dr. Osborne, I think it was February when you were in Western Pennsylvania. A colleague of mine, Joe Welch, and I showed up
right
to
before COVID locked us all down.
Right.
Last
I feel like it was late February, early March or something. But nevertheless, when we got there, we were like, wow, this site's great. We had all these great ideas, particularly that we were hoping to use for our last unit of the year, which is Reconstruction. But the messing up of the school schedule is kind of throwing the brakes on at the Civil War for me. But nevertheless, I'd come up with some ideas of how I could implement this, not by itself, but implement it into what I do in a middle school classroom. I'm not sure how many of the participants out there, 228 of you teach middle school, but keeping them active and keeping them engaged and keeping them varied in your instruction is certainly something that I found that I like to do. One of the class mantras I have in my classroom is a picture's worth 1,000 words. And anytime I can find a primary source photograph or a painting, usually it's a painting considering what I teach, the early, from the Revolution up through the Civil War. Anytime I can find an image to use to get their minds going, I like to do that. So using Engaging Congress, what I had planned on doing was using this drawing that you see here from Harper's Weekly about the first election, the first vote. And I would ask some questions like, what do you see here? What do you notice first? What kind of objects are there? Because when I think when students think of voting, they don't think of what they see in this drawing. So it'd be interesting to see what they think is happening there, even though the word, the phrase, the first vote is evident on this drawing. Not necessarily every student might pick up on that first. They might be drawn to the people. And then, so we could talk about that a little bit. And then I would have them contemplate why it was made and what, they probably would come to the conclusion after the first round of questioning that it, in fact, is African Americans voting for the first time. And I would ask them, who do you think the audience is for this? And maybe if there's any other hidden message maybe that they have, and I would ask them maybe to look at why the gentlemen who are voting are dressed differently. I would ask them maybe to think about who's running the election and why might that be important. And also anytime that I have a drawing or a photograph, particularly a drawing or a newspaper article, which was the way of communication of the time. Okay, once we get to the message, how might this be different today? Would it be done? How could it be done in a tweet? Would it be done in a tweet? Or TikTok or whatever they're familiar with. Try to bring the lesson to their level. And after we first looked at each drawing, I would have them jump onto the Engaging Congress and use the connectivity to their device and dragging and dropping and answering the questions. I think would be the next follow-up way I would kind of incorporate this into my classroom. And then finally, I think, you know, anytime you're teaching middle school, you can get them out of their seats. That's certainly something that I try to strive to do. You know, just keep them moving, give them different types of learning in a given lesson if you can. And I've kind of thought up of some ways where you could use some sort of manipulative that they want, maybe a piece of candy or something to focus on the poll taxes, literacy test, grandfather clause at the time, without getting too detailed into that activity. But so instead of using this on its own, I think it would be a great tool to pull in to Reconstruction in particular, vote early and vote often. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to type them into the chat. I'd be happy to answer them. So Dr. Osborne, back to you.
Thanks, Larry. You had the hard job of going as the third one, but you went first last time, but you did a great.
Oh, that's good. First, last, just glad to be involved.
Managing your time. Let's, you know, I have great news for those of you who voted for the executive branch. We are in the final process of one on the executive branch. The video, those cute little videos with our beanies that we give away, the squeeze heads and the stickers, is in its final process at HypnoVid, and we have our documents identified, and we will be providing that hopefully before the beginning of the fall school year. And I love the census, so I had to throw that in there. I know it's only once every 10 years, but it's so important. So I love your results. Hopefully we'll be able to capture those as our poll results and have those on. I just wanted to do a few concluding remarks as you guys are putting stuff in the chat, and any of my co-presenters will be able to jump back in. I want to remind you that here's a great picture from when we were visiting a classroom in Florida, and you can see that this particular picture, who might even be on the chat, Elizabeth Rasmussen, her students, she made incentivize them to complete a homework assignment, and if they did their homework, they were able to use their phones instead of the classroom laptops to do the Engaging Congress assignment. And you can see they have a piece of paper with an assignment that was asking them about things as they were looking at them, and you can see people using the different devices there. And if you're leading Zoom sessions right now or some other platform, you could do just like Larry and Jen were doing and Kayla with individual things, and walk them through one before you went ahead to assign them on their own, or watch the video together as a group. And just our last slide here is just to remind you that it's adaptable for learners at all grade levels and ability levels. So that, and we also tried to emphasize different types of social studies items that we have in each of the units, in addition to have something that starts at the beginning of the founding era through the present. We also try to have a map, text, photographs, political cartoons, and charts in each of the units, so that you can have your students work with all those different types of primary source documents that they're going to see on the different standardized tests they take, but also in real life as they evaluate the news and the that they're seeing across whatever platform. I believe this picture was taken at the PD that Larry participated in, and you can see there the teachers working with the, you know, back in the old days when we printed out, you mean pre-COVID, when we had them printed out in front of them, the different things that they are using. We also want to make a shout out that we're developing teacher network of our own in each state. You can see I have 3 teachers from different states that we brought on to show that. And we're also working on a project to help correlate to your state standards, which Kayla kind of demonstrated, showing how the TEKS, the Texas standards correlate. And Larry's going to help us with Pennsylvania, and Jen in Florida. We want to have a place on the website where we would have a click for you to link to the standards in every state. So we have a few minutes left for questions. I wondered if any of the teachers that helped present, since I haven't followed the chat, if there's anything that they saw that they wanted to address, or anything else they wanted to jump in. I hope you enjoyed having teachers show you how they're using it in their classroom, and it sparked your ideas. And please reach out to us at any time. We're going to post this PowerPoint. It's both in the chat, but also if you go to the events page at engagingcongress.org, you'll be able to access the PowerPoint from there as well. I I don't see my teachers unmuting their microphones. This is the only time.
The only thing I'm answering, Dr. Osborne, is someone was inquiring, sorry, I lost her name, Lisa, about how to align it with content with state history. And I don't know if she's asking about state standards or state, I mean, I guess depending on what you're teaching within the state history content of where you live, like, so Pennsylvania might be different from Texas, different from Florida, different from Oregon rather. So I hope that addresses the concern. If not, Lisa, feel free to elaborate on my response, and you know, I'll try to answer best I can. So.
And by the way, I just want to highlight, I'm going to get a little closer, the votes for women. I mean, I love these little guys. They're so cute.
So they're little, we call them stress heads. We also have kind of the original George Ben Franklin looking guy. And we also have a no taxation without representation guy if they ever arrive from China. Before Tori jumps in, I want to thank Second Avenue Learning for hosting this. I want to also thank Half Full Nelson was our software developer that developed the gaming aspects, and each of them, you saw the gerrymander game, but each of the 5 games kind of hits a different social studies skill as well. There's a chart for pie interpreting, there is a sequencing for the voting rights, there's a geography element for the states' rights and civil rights that has your students learn where those are from. And we also have another interactive called Citizen that was developed for Indiana with Indiana content as our primary sources, but all of the games are applicable to, and all of the primary source interpretation and analysis is applicable to anybody, but especially a shout out there. We have a reporter game for the 1960s where they have to take a primary source and develop a newspaper story, and they have an editor go through and analyze how well they match the headline to the facts to the photograph. And we also have in the 21st century portion a game where you are a small town mayor and you have a budget, and the students have to spend their money and try to get through an entire fiscal year. And every month they have set expenses, and then they have new things like, we had more snow than anticipated, where are you going to take the money from? Or, you need some new employees because you have COVID. And so you have to hire a whole bunch of, contact tracers. So that game is a really great game, and Half Full Nelson did a great job. And we also have a Civil War game that's kind of reminiscent of the Oregon Trail. So that's our Citizen game. And it's actually with an IN to stand for Indiana. So Tori hasn't jumped in and cut us off, but we are right on time here. We've loved having all of you here. We hope that many of you, if you haven't already, will use this in your classrooms and share it with your colleagues and join us in helping set up standards specific for your state. And Tori, you and Megan have done a fantastic job helping all of us presenters make it look pretty good. So thank you guys so much to my fellow TPS consortium member there.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Elizabeth and team of fellow teachers for that excellent presentation. One of our greatest joys is getting to work with educators around the country. We always learn something from them, and it makes our job that much easier when we're trying to create something that makes your jobs easier and more effective for your students. So moving on, at 4 o'clock, we have Teach Civics and Improve Your Knowledge of the Constitution, brought to us by Maria Gallo, who is the Director of Professional Development and Special Programs at the Center for Civic Education. So we'll see you all back here at 4 o'clock. I've put in the chat that the voting is still open in Election Edge. If any of you want to continue to cast your ballots for who Joe Biden should pick as his running mate, and any of the other fun elections that we have going, we'll share that info at the end of the day. And if you want to play with a prediction map, you can do that too and share your results. All right, have a great little break, and we'll see you all at 4.